So I have this question here from Essay. An essay is saying for someone who seeks external validation from others he or she works with, what steps can the person take to move from that? Essay goes on to say, I discover that I have a trait to act impulsively around new people or friends to make them like me and validate my ideas. And even in the long term, to the detriment of some of my personal values. Now, this is a very good question from Essay. It's talking about seeking validation. And Essay has talked about it to the point whereby Essay is seeking validation at his or her own detriment. So I don't know Essay's gender, but then Essay is saying, at my detriment, I'm willing to be accepted and validated. So I find myself seeking external validation. How do I overcome this? This is my yearning for validation. It's a very good question because if I'm being very honest with you, this was one of my biggest struggles in 2024. I struggled with validation for a huge part of the year. I questioned the validity of what I was doing because I was looking at other people and their response to it to know whether it was worth doing or not. External validation. Struggled with it for a very long time. I think up until the last days of the year in December, I think after Christmas, I read in the scripture and it started to set me free from this need for external validation. And I was studying the book of John. I'm still studying the book of John. So if you listen to a lot of my podcasts now I'm talking about, I would reference the book of John a lot because that's where I am right now when I read the Bible. But you see, in the book of John, Jesus was speaking to people here. And at a point, he was telling them, look, John, you sent people to John, investigators to John. I will try to read it from the Bible. John chapter 5, verse 33 and 34. It says, in fact, you sent investigators to listen to John the Baptist, and his testimony about me was true. That means John validated Jesus. But Jesus says in verse 34, of course, I have no need for human witnesses. He says, of course, I have no need for human validation. That's how some scripture, some versions of the scripture puts it. That struck me. Because here I was struggling to get human validation. And here Jesus is saying, I have no need. That even though John validates me, I am not looking for John's validation. It just happens to come by the way. And Jesus says one thing when you read further. He says, the work I do validates me. They approve me. And the Father that sent me to do the work approves me. Those are the only two things that Jesus looked at to validate himself. That taught me that the most important validation is from within. From within. The validation from within is the validation from God. So Jesus had validation from God on his inside, and that helped him to express. So Jesus was able to look at his own work and say, this is God's work. It is good. I do not need anybody to come and tell me. But I welcome it if people say it, but I'm not going to live on that. I live on the fact that I can look at my own work that the Father has given me to do and say, I am doing it well, is the right thing to do, I will keep doing it. That is called self-validation. Very hard thing, especially in today's world. I'll be very honest with you, I struggle with it. I write a couple of things on X and I share them across most of my platforms. But a lot of times I choose what I share on my platform based on the response I get on X. So I look at it, I'm like, how many people reposted this? How many people liked it? And I take the ones that have the top reposts and the top likes. And last year, the Spirit of God was saying, you are missing it. It doesn't matter how many people like it, how many people repost it. Some of them will have 0 reposts, very few likes. But those are the ones, some of those ones are the ones I want you to share. Those are the ones that somebody out there needs. But the devil is trying to discourage you from sharing it. Some of them, when I write them, some of these thoughts that I write, I know in my spirit that they are good. I know that they make sense. I know that they are able to help someone out there. But then I look at it and like, maybe it's not that good. Because it didn't get many likes or many shares. Maybe it doesn't make that much sense. It's a big problem. Self-validation. It is something the devil attacks. So I say it's a good question that Essie has asked because it's a spiritual battle. Not really a mental battle. It's a spiritual battle, not a physical battle. It's not an innocuous thing. It's a very deep thing. The devil is attacking your sense of self-validation. The question here is, why does the devil attack it? That's what we need to ask ourselves. Why is the devil attacking your sense of self-validation? I truly believe it's because the devil doesn't want you to create. The devil doesn't want you to create. And I am of the belief that the ability to create is an identity we alone share with God. The devil or even angels don't share it. Angels cannot create. The devil is a fallen angel. It doesn't know how to create anything. He is no more than a messenger. They cannot create. The devil cannot create. So the devil is very envious of our ability to create. Angels can do a lot of incredible things, but that one thing to create, they cannot create. That is the image that God made us in that is similar to his. And creation starts with an idea. And the water for an idea to grow is validation. Your ability to think of something and say, this is a good idea. Let me continue with it or develop it further. The devil cannot create. That's why they cannot procreate. Angels cannot procreate. They can't. That's why when you read the Bible, it says that a lot of fallen angels had to start coming to have sexual intercourse with man, with human beings, so that they could begin to procreate. And they started giving birth to abominations, weird creatures. But they can't do it on their own. Angels cannot get together and make a child. They cannot multiply. So the devil hates that we have this incredible privilege. He feels we are not worthy of it. That's the biggest enmity he has with God. Creation. That's why when God made Adam, the first assignment God gave Adam was name the animals. Create names for them. The devil hated that. Why give him this power to create names, something we cannot do? And to name the animals, Adam had to have an idea, and he needed to be confident about his idea. Remember, there were no other human beings around Adam, so he had to validate himself. Self-validation is very important to our existence as human beings for us to reach our highest potential. That's why we all struggle with it. Every single one of us struggles with it. Self-validation. And I'll tell you how the devil corrupts our ability to self-validate. I'll tell you how. A lot of our insecurity about self-validation comes from a faulty parenting, faulty parent-child dynamics. I go back to parenting a lot because parenting is one of the greatest assignments, one of the greatest tasks a person can have. I talk to people day in, day out. But a lot of times when I want to go back, I'm like, tell me about your childhood. In that lies a lot of answers. I'm telling you, I've hardly spoken to anybody that tells me they're having a challenge, a long-standing challenge that is not rooted to their childhood. So this thing about external validation, a lot of times is rooted to our childhood and how we were brought up by our parents. Because the dynamics of parents and children is in 3 phases. I've done a podcast on this before. And for those of you that are listening to the podcast, listen to the podcast. And there's one I talk about the dynamics of parenting, I think, or 3 stages of parenting. It's right there. And there are 3 phases in the development of a child and a parent relationship. But a lot of times a lot of parents don't follow through on these 3 stages. And so then we have lopsided children. And this is what affects us when it comes to our ability to self-validate, that God-given ability to self-validate, to look at something and say it is good. It's a God-given ability. Remember, when God created the world, he looked at his own world and said, it is good. He said, it is very good. Self-validation is what God has given us the ability to do. Not to look and consult with somebody else. We learn that along the way. It's not how we are. When Adam saw Eve, he didn't need to consult with any other person to say she was good. That's how we are. God made us to be confident. We learn insecurity. So I'll go back to our parents. From very young, we learn to look to our parents' face for approval. From very young. I remember an experience my wife had. I don't know which one of my kids it was, but one of them used to latch very hard on the breast when she was breastfeeding. And so she was like, I can't, she was very tense when she wanted to feed him. I think it was one of my boys. I don't know which one of them it was. And when he would latch hard, she would squeeze her face and he would look up to her. He was just a few days old. He would look up and he would see her face and he would know to soften his grip, to release his grip just a little bit. He learned that she wasn't happy from the facial expression. And when she does that, when her facial expression softens and she smiles, he knows he's doing the right thing. At that moment, he started to learn the concept of approval and disapproval. So he knows if mommy looks this way, she's not happy. When she looks this way, she's happy. I should continue what I'm doing. When she looks this way, I shouldn't do it. When she makes that sound, I should stop what I'm doing. When she smiles and she giggles, approval. And at that, a few days into the world, he learned to get validation from us as parents. Now, that is not bad, to be honest with you, because the first phase of parenting is to guide a child, is to tell a child what to do. And that's what is called the training of a child. You tell them what to do, how to do, when to do. You are guiding them. You tell them, do this, do this, do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. That's called the training of a child. The mistake we make that puts a lot of us as adults in a place where we cannot self-validate is when our parents pack in guiding and directing for the rest of our lives. And a lot of parents do that. They pack there. So you should move on to a second stage where you begin to collaborate with the child. Rather than telling the child what to do, you ask the child, what do you think? What are your thoughts? What is your opinion? What do you feel? This is what I think. What do you think? When a child starts entering their teenage age, you start to talk with them. From that 14, 15, down to 19, you start to talk with them. What do you think? This is what I think, this is what I think, this is what but it doesn't mean you take everything they say, but you allow them the opportunity to share their thoughts and say, okay, that's what you think. All right, I don't agree. So we're going to do it this way, but thanks for sharing your thoughts. But the child is given the opportunity to have thoughts, to have ideas. Not everything accepted, but on days when it's accepted, they now think, oh, I have the ability to make good decisions. This is what builds us as individuals. This particular stage is what builds our individuality. When a parent doesn't allow the child to go through that stage, this child remains infantile, always looking to the face for approval, not sure of their ideas, not able to articulate their ideas, not able to follow through on their ideas. So it's very important that we all go through a stage of collaboration with our parents. From that teenage year, from our teenage years to our early adulthood, highly collaborative. Ask them what they think. What do you think? Have a discussion. At this stage, decision making is slow, and that's why a lot of parents don't go through it. Why should we have a conversation about something that I know what the outcome or the process should be? Why should I have a conversation on it? Because I can guarantee you that early stage of parenting can be very addictive, where you play God. Go and do this. Don't go out. Don't do this. Go and pick this. No, it feels really good that you can tell another human being to go and do something. I can tell them, don't go out. I've said it. Nobody should go out. Nobody should do this. But it feels so good. So a lot of parents are addicted to it. So we want it to continue. And then we use disapproval as emotional blackmail in teenage years. I'm very disappointed in you. You will make me very sad if you went to go and study this. It will really break my heart. Not knowing you're destroying the child's individuality. And then it gets to this last phase where parents surrender and begin to say, this child, their brain is newer than my brain. And the parents start to say, guide me. Guide me. Tell me what to do. Forget about what I think. You guide me. This is what builds leadership in individuals. This is what builds us up, because we are all made to be leaders in one sphere or the other. But the devil attacks it. It doesn't allow us. It doesn't want us to be leaders. It doesn't want us to be leaders. Because when you lead, you create. And remember, it doesn't want you to create. The first thing you lead with are your ideas. And it starts from how your parents taught you to lead. And the funny thing is, parents that take their children through this early stage of guiding to the second stage of individualism can rest in the leadership of their children. But then it gets to the stage where parents cannot guide anymore and they expect the children to lead without equipping them. So by the time you are in your 40s, your parents cannot do anything. They are beginning to lose a bit of their minds. You understand? The mind is beginning to get dull. 50s, they now expect you to lead. But you're still going to them for advice. And they can't give you. Because they never taught you to articulate and to stand on your ideas. That is why we can't self-validate. Because a lot of us have faulty upbringing. It happens. But that's not how God made us. And that's the good news. That's the good news. The fact is that we can always recalibrate when we have an understanding of what the master plan was. And this is what God was trying to teach me when He led me to this scripture late last year after I struggled with so much need for validation. I doubted whether the podcast was making sense, whether anything was making sense because of feedback. Validation is not bad, but you should never seek it. It's a byproduct of believing in yourself. Never seek it. It comes on its own. And this is where I want to tell you how people are. There are different categories of people around you. A friend of mine shared something on WhatsApp that that I held on to at the end of the year last year. He wrote something, an experience he had. And I'm going to share it with you guys so you can understand how people are and why it's important for you to believe in yourself and run with your own self-validation. He talked about a wristband, a bracelet that he had, and he wore it every day. But deep in him, he liked that bracelet, but he wasn't sure what other people thought of it. He was scared that other people thought it was immature of him wearing such an ornamental bracelet. Some people would look down on him and say, this man at his age, why is he wearing such a bracelet? This thing is for younger people. So he felt insecure wearing it, but he liked it. He believed it looked beautiful on him, but nobody told him that. So he wore it, but he wore it with a lot of insecurity, not proudly. And he said, some years later, that bracelet one day broke. It broke and the beads went everywhere. And that was the end of the bracelet. And he went out the first day in a long while without the bracelet. And someone that used to see him frequently said, where is that your bracelet? And I said, what bracelet? He said, the bracelet you used to wear that looked so good on you. Why are you not wearing it anymore? And he was shocked. He was shocked by the fact that people had noticed that bracelet. He went around again and someone said, how is that your beautiful bracelet now? And he was shocked that people only gave compliments after the demise of the bracelet. And one thing he thought about is, I should have worn this thing more confidently. Because I knew I was onto something. I knew it was beautiful. I should have enjoyed every single day of wearing it with confidence. Look, seek truth, not trend. Trend is the outer noise. Truth is the inner voice. Self-validation. Be able to look at what you have and tell yourself the truth. Is it good? Is it not good? It doesn't matter what people are saying on the outside. If you don't think it's good, then go back. I don't think this thing is good enough. If you think it's good, don't think too much about what other people are thinking. That's one of the things that helped me as a logo designer. I hardly had that, oh, I need people to tell me it's good before I do it. No, hardly. I see a lot of designers, that is their Achilles heel. They would never put anything out till a community of designers say it's good. But what I want to tell you, number one, is that a lot of us are surrounded by envious people. They will never tell you it's good because they don't have it. You having it reminds them of what they don't have. So they will keep mum. First category of people, they're envious. I tell him it's good, so his head will start swelling, or her head will start swelling. I don't need to tell him. And if I don't want him to know, I don't want her to know. They're there. Then you have the second category of people who are watchers. They watch, looking for the best opportunity to compliment you. They are watching. A lot of them watch for different things. They want to watch how consistent you are, whether it was an error, whether it was a flash in the pan. So they watch. They are not so quick to commit to a compliment or validation. They want to watch. Some watch because they are shy. They don't want to be forward to tell you how things are. But in their hearts, they know, they like it, they admire it. They are trying to adopt it in their closet. They admire it. But they don't want to be forward. They are watchers. But then you have some people that are encouragers. They will tell you right off. They will tell you right up, straight off the bat, that this is good, this is nice, continue. This is a great idea. But they are just a fraction of the people. Like Jesus said, John was one of those people, but he didn't live by John's validation. He lived by his own. You must be able to look at what you've done and tell yourself that it is good. It takes practice. You get used to it. After a while, I've decided that this year, I'm going to validate myself more and get used to it. And you know what? I'm going to take seriously those people who give me their validation without me seeking it. And that's why a lot of you need to be more serious about the people that validate you without you seeking them. They are very important. Keep them around you. Validation should never be sought. Validation should be given. It takes a lot of courage for somebody to tell you this is good. Because a lot of us as people, we like to get. So when you have given people, don't take them for granted. Don't take them for granted. I'm very privileged to have some people who just reach out to me and tell me, oh, I love this, I love this, I love what you're doing, continue doing it. But I must always remind myself that I don't do it because of those people. I do it because of the Father who sent me. And because I look at the work I'm doing in itself and I see it as good. Let that always guide you. Never compromise yourself to get other people's validation. Never compromise yourself to get other people's validation. Because in the end, you kill yourself. You kill the spirit of creativity within you. And that's exactly what the devil wants. You were created to create. And creation starts with an idea. And an idea grows in a place of strong self-validation. So for Essie, I want you to know that this is a spiritual challenge. Take it more seriously this year. Be serious about it. That you will listen to the truth, the voice within, and you will learn to question trend, the external voice. And as you listen to the voice within, you would find happiness, you would find contentment, and you would find your true identity that is like God.